Hey everybody, and welcome back to another weekly upload. I, of course, am Carl, and we are here to bring you another episode of Vacuum Exposition. Now, it has been a pretty special month, of course, this being my birthday month, back on Cinco de Mayo. Hopefully everybody enjoyed their own Cinco de Mayo, but I had a pretty great one, followed by last night, which was my birthday dinner with my family. We went out and enjoyed some time together. And of course, there was a vacuum related gift in that, and we'll get into that in just a second. But for those that have been watching this month, or maybe you watch the channel and haven't tuned in this month, I do periodic series throughout the year for depending on the month. For my birthday month, I usually do something special that's kind of different. But I do have a few other series to go through for the rest of the year. We'll take a look at more of those as time goes on. One big one that is coming up well, it's a while away from now, but I will be going back and doing September, where I look at sets of machines that came out at the same time. Maybe they were available, in a certain model and year range. Either way, we're going to be taking a look at some sets at later in the year. But right now we are in a series for the month of May. I decided to do something a little bit different, mostly inspired by my recent acquisitions from my good friend Jared, whom used to live in Oregon, now lives up here in Washington. But in his move, he did have to get rid of quite a bit of his collection. Him being a huge fan of this particular vacuum style, he had amassed quite a good collection of them, and I ended up with some of them. So this month we are looking at Japanese vacuum cleaners, and not just like machines that were made in Japan and sold here in the United States. We're looking at machines that were in some cases made in Japan or made in the United States, but owned and used in Japan. So for the past couple weeks, we've looked at a few different ones. So it has been really, really fun getting some of these guys out and getting them on camera and seeing how they do. Today, no different. We have another really, really cool one that I have been wanting to do a video on for quite some time now. So I'm really, really excited to get it out and show you guys. But that's our series for this month. In addition to that, I've kind of been adding a little special aspect to each episode as well, doing some vacuums rescued, showing some of the machines that I've been going through as we go through the machines that I've gotten from Jared, or we go through the machines that I brought back from Kansas. I'm currently in the process of selling many, many, many vacuum cleaners, not just machines from the Kansas duplicates, but I have an influx of machines that comes in pretty routinely from different sources. So it has just kind of been fun to be able to get back into the hobby a little bit more, and put work into something and get them back in the hands of other collectors and stuff like that. But anyways, let's get on to it. We've got a special portion before we get into our exposition, so let's take a look at some really cool vacuums. Well, everybody, we have got an interesting one here. So with this particular machine, there's also a story behind it, and I'll tell that in a sec. But what we're looking at is about a 1973 Hoover convertible model U4005. Now, the 4005 was a pretty basic machine, no headlight, no wider, bigger hood, and as well as a button snap bag instead of a zipper up the back, but it was still a really, really cool model. Now, I'll do a more in-depth video with this particular machine, in September, actually, because the 1973 Hoover convertible set is now complete in my collection. So this one we'll see a little bit more, and we'll compare it to its siblings. But this particular machine, I gotta count it as a vacuums rescued, but this was actually a birthday gift this year. My brother and I chat on the phone quite frequently. He's one of my best friends, so we were talking one of the last few days, and I had mentioned kind of what we did on my actual birthday weekend. I believe it was the 2nd of May. where me and my wife went down to downtown Seattle and just kind of played tourist again, kind of like what we did in Europe. And we went to the Seattle Aquarium, which had a new exhibit or new display hall that they just set up. So we definitely wanted to go check that out. But off to the left of the new display that they have was a antique mall that I have been to many, many times. And being as that I am a collector of different things, not just vacuums, I had to go in there and take a look and see what they had. So, in looking at it, me and my wife were just kind of touring around, looking around at things that are in this antique store, and my wife said, "Oh, look, there's a vacuum section." Now, I don't know about you guys or how often you go to an antique store or even thrift stores for the most part, but there is oftentimes never vacuum cleaners. They're not usually seen as collectible. And generally speaking, a vintage vacuum cleaner is only worth what someone's willing to pay, usually. Vacuums are not generally recognized as antiques in antique stores, even though they are. So, very odd. I know it is strange, and for us collectors, it makes it even harder when you try to go find one of these things. But either way, she had said, "Hey, look, the vacuum section." And I thought, ha ha, there's never a vacuum section. And she said, "No, really." So I turned, and lo and behold, there was three vacuums sitting there in an antique store. So once I got past the bewilderment of seeing vacuums in an antique store, I went and took a look, and there were three vacuums there. There was a Hoover Dial-O-Matic from the 70s. It was in a red and white color. One that I've actually had five of in my total collecting career. So it wasn't as interesting to me as the one that was sitting next to it. The other one was like some pump vacuum of some unknown origin. I don't have any of those in my collection, but antique stores tend to put some astronomical price on them because they're considered a primitive antique. So, no electrical motors or anything, doesn't plug in. I mean, I didn't give that a second look. If you want to see me operate any of those, go back to my Nashville trip. Me and my wife went into an antique mall in Nashville, Tennessee, and I toured around, looked at some vacuums in an antique mall, but there were some of those primitive ones, so I did operate a couple of them. If you're interested to see how they work, definitely go back and look at that. But either way, this was sitting right next to that Hoover Dial-O-Matic. So, like I said, this is a 1973 Hoover convertible model U4005. And I saw it there and I was dumbfounded because this is actually a model that I've been trying to find. Now, they are not rare. There was many, many of these sold. They're very common. If anything, this would have been considered one of the most common ones due to the price point that they were at, being the lowest on the line. However, for some reason, this particular model has become the hardest for me to find. And I have all of that set. But when me and my wife were down in Seattle a few weeks ago, I kind of was kicking myself because we didn't drive. We actually took public transportation in, and we rode a light rail or kind of like a monorail thing all the way into the city. Being as we had more plans the rest of that day, me and my wife kind of agreed that it was probably not the best time to buy a vacuum and haul it around Seattle, being as we had dinner plans at a very, very nice restaurant. So, reluctantly, I left this thing back at the antique store. It was for a really reasonable price. If anybody's interested in that, I can give it to you privately. But I was more than happy to pay it, and it would have been a great one and a great story. But either way, it ended up staying there due to logistics. So weeks go past and I'm having conversations with my brother. I usually call him after I get off work, and I was just kind of chatting and talking about what we did that weekend. And I mentioned, yeah, I was at that old antique mall, and I'd been there with him before, and he's been there many times too. And I mentioned this vacuum. I said, maybe a couple months I'll go back down to Seattle and I'll find a way to bring it home with me. But either way, kind of a bummer, wasn't able to bring it back. But so didn't think anything of it until dinner last night. We went out as a family to kind of celebrate my birthday. And when presents were being bestowed upon me, my brother opened his trunk, and there this thing sat. Immediately, of course, it comes right back to my brain like, oh, this conversation, which my brother has a knack for doing that. It's taking something off of a conversation we had and turning it into a gift at the next Christmas, birthday, or whatever um, special occasion. So very, very, very much appreciated to him, of course, for this because it is, like I said, a completion of a set, but it also is my first convertible that I've really acquired lately that hasn't been part of like the stuff I've gotten from Jared or the stuff I brought back from Kansas. So the first one really that I've gotten that wasn't, part of one of those big acquisitions. So I am super, super happy with it. It does need a little bit of cleaning, but overall it is 100% original with its original bag, its original cord and plug, of course, the original hood. It does need a bag, but I'm guessing that's because whenever the antique store got it, they probably took the old bag because it had stuff in it, threw that away. But it still has a good belt in it, so I am super excited. So we will take a look at this in a few months when we get into September. But either way, James, if you're watching this again, big, big thank you. I can't believe you went and got this thing. But of course, I love it, and it is not going anywhere. So, but anyways, let's get on to our vacuum in question and the subject of the thumbnail for vacuum exposition. Well, all right, everyone. We have ourselves another little canister to take a look at today. I know we have been taking a look at mostly canisters for this series for the vacuums from Japan, but truth be told, there weren't very many uprights in Japan that people use. There are a couple, and I do actually have one that I got from Jared. However, it needs a good deal of restoration first before I go ahead and put it out on the channel. But either way, we have ourselves a little canister. Now, what we're looking at is a 19. Now, what we're looking at is a 1974 Toshiba model of VC-62PH. Don't ask me why any of those numbers or letters are associated with each other in order to make a model number. Only thing I can think of is VC being vacuum cleaner, but hard to tell because I unfortunately can't read the majority of the labels on here. Now, what I was able to kind of deduce based on, what I had here, we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, what I was able to deduce was going off of what I had in front of me, as well as the history of the company. We have something interesting to take a look at. Now, of course, vacuum cleaners in Japan have actually been pretty well known. They go back quite a ways, clear back into the 1950s and earlier. But the machines that we tend to see nowadays they're more likely associated from the 80s on. So the 70s machines we don't see quite as much. Now, the way that I was able to kind of tell that this was from the 70s, well, if you kind of look at it, it has a very nice metallic looking sticker on the top. That definitely is a little bit indicative of the time frame, but also looking at the control panel right here. Now, these machines all had a hose with a switch in the end of it. This switch being quite a bit older than others. I think it does line up to being in the 1970s. In addition to that, just kind of looking at the control panel, it does have a serial number here on the front. At least that's what I can deduce from it. I looked at the model tag. It doesn't have anything about a serial number, nor does it label one. So it's kind of hard to figure out based on that. But what I'm seeing, it says 374135. Now, I know that, deducing things by serial numbers is kind of hit or miss, but what that tells me, or at least that gives me the inclination, is this was made sometime around March of 1974 and was most likely the 135th off the line. I don't know, don't quote me on that, but that is the best I can do deduction wise. I looked everywhere for any ads or even similar vacuum cleaners to this. The most similar thing I could find was what looked to be from the 90s, maybe. And even still, it was quite a bit taller. It had the same kind of hose type deal, but no handle or anything. And the switch was located up here, so it's quite a bit different than what we're looking at here. The other way that I can kind of deduce that it is at least made sometime around the time frame I'm thinking is the actual label here up on the top. Now, as you can kind of see, it says Toshiba, a little square right there. I'll even show the logo a little bit bigger right here. So you can kind of see it says Toshiba, and it has the T that kind of drifts off. Now that logo for the Toshiba company was utilized from about 1950 to about 1984. So if this is made sometime in 1974, it puts it right in that gap where that logo was used. So I'd say I have a pretty good inclining of where this was made in terms of the time frame. Now, in terms of options for this little machine, it's definitely one of those early style type of bagless machines. And I say that because this does not have a paper bag setup. And I'll quickly show this thing taken apart right here. Voila. So this is what we call the duster collection chamber. This is a very interesting little vacuum cleaner. So how we would take a look and empty this thing is, so we first have a filter type disc right here, and it comes off in a ring, and this is permanently attached. From what I can tell, you probably were advised to re-vacuum this off with a different vacuum, or maybe you just picked it off or washed it off maybe, but not 100% sure. So this would have been the first thing that would have given you, well, more clean air for that matter. So we'll put that down there. Next up, we had the actual foam filter. Now, I would assume that these had replacement filters that you could get, because this does come out like here, and then you can reuse the plastic bit. Now, what doesn't make sense to me is it had a door on the back, that you would essentially, it would open like this. So honestly, I'm not sure why that would be like that, but that's kind of how their collection system worked. Now, in addition to that, you had just a regular dust collection bin, that which you see right here. So very, very kind of typical of a lot of other vacuum cleaners at the time that we had here in the United States. Certainly things like Lewitt's and Filter Queens had kind of similar setups, albeit they didn't use a disc, they used a cone, but either way, very kind of similar. Now, what I thought was really kind of interesting about this, well, are the wheels actually, and I'll show you right here. Now, as you can see, we have the model tag right there, but we have four wheels, two of which are caster-like, which these two are more stationary. So the machine was really only made to go this way, based on where the wheel placement is, which is very odd because that means that it moves sideways, which I guess it kind of makes sense, whereas the control panel on this is kind of offset, so kind of very odd, but I guess they made it work somehow. But either way, interesting design. But kind of wish they had made it out of metal or something, just because where the wheels are and everything, it does make this a little bit weak. And I did have to do a little bit of repairing on it when I went through and did my little cleanup of this machine. So let me put this all back together and we'll keep taking a look at it. So let's get this thing back. So like I was saying with the way the wheels are positioned, basically how you would have kind of hauled this little thing around. So those rear stationary wheels were back here, the casters up here. Now the hose angle goes right there. So essentially, I guess you would have just pulled it along like that by where the hose was. But I still think that's kind of odd having the control panel off to the side. But it was a design, and obviously somebody wanted enough to buy it, so I'd say it was pretty successful. But in terms of the features on this machine, now I tried to decipher what all the buttons and everything were. This right up here, this little switch, is not the on switch. That's actually a cord winder. So this machine actually does have a cord winder up here in the top. So the cord comes out at the back, and then you would just hit this little switch and it would reel it back in. You also had a high-low on this particular machine. So very, very interesting that you had a two-speed motor. Now this button, I'm not sure. I've pressed it. It has not made a difference. So I don't know. Maybe at some point we will find out what that is. But either way, and when I tried to decipher it, it came up with something that didn't make any sense to me. So either way, we'll figure that out as we go. But it also had a bag check indicator, or basically a suction cutoff. So if the machine got full and it wasn't getting any suction, there's a little bar that would go forward all the way up and go, oh no, it's full. We need to dump this. So but otherwise, you had kind of like some of the more upright canisters that we had in the United States, a handle that would normally help you pick it up, but then would go flush when it was just sitting. So very, very stylistically, very, very interesting. Now, the VC-62PH was definitely a machine that was a little bit more on the budget friendly. I'm not sure exactly how much these were, but I can tell you right now, based on the design, the build, and everything, this was offered amongst another trio of vacuum cleaners by other companies in Japan, and was fairly successful, but I can definitely tell that not many are still around these days. Like I said, there was literally nothing out there about these. The closest things that I can find, not even from the same era, or if they are from the same era, they're totally different looking vacuum cleaners that honestly kind of look more like the pack and clean that we took a look at a few weeks ago. But that's all I have in terms of information on the little VC-62PH. They are really, really cool in design. But let's see how this thing performs, and let's get on to our vacuum demo. All right, everybody, so we have the little 1974 Toshiba VC-62PH already and plugged in. Now, like I mentioned earlier, these little machines from Japan most of the time came with the switch in the hose handle. So, which is really good and makes a lot more sense the more I think about it, because, when you're vacuuming, you don't want to bend down and hit the button or whatever, or, kick it and possibly break it. Makes more sense to have it where your hand is. So, either way, of course, in the United States, we didn't have very much of that, and if we did, it was a very, very, very deluxe option. So, because normally we just had like a foot switch that, I definitely know a lot got broken over time, but I digress. So this little machine is quite interesting. It's not the quietest, I will say, but it does do a good job in terms of suction. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get any attachments, and I don't think Jared did either, which in that case, it really just came with the machine and the hose, which is good because honestly, you can't really use it without the hose being switch. But anyways, let's see how this thing does and how the suction performs. So now, like I said, I'm not sure what that big button does on the control panel. However, in just kind of testing and playing around with it, I think it might actually be a self-cleaning feature, because when I tried to push it while vacuuming earlier, well, it didn't really do anything or make a big difference. However, if I turn the machine off and leave it and then push the button and feel the hose, there's no suction coming through the hose. So I think that's a self-cleaning feature, but I'll show you what it does basically when you hit the button. So it almost sounds like the motor is stuck, which I don't quite understand. Maybe it's a dual direction, maybe it's a blower. I'm not really 100% sure. And like I said, when I tried to translate it with Google Translate, it didn't really make a whole lot of sense. So, but either way, it still operates just perfectly in vacuum mode, which I'll just kind of keep going with that. So, this thing did really, really well, even with two speeds, one being lower for doing kind of the more fragile or gentle areas. This thing still was able to pull the carpet up. So it does have plenty of power for a little machine out of the 1970s. So I hope you guys all enjoyed our little run demo for today. I certainly did, and I'm definitely impressed with this little guy. Well, everybody, we have made it to the end of another awesome video of Vacuum Exposition. This was such a fun one to get out and try out, and um, just give it its time to get put on camera. This little machine, as well as really any of the other ones that we've taken a look at, were made to be just a utilitarian piece of the home. They weren't meant to be, anything overly fancy. They were just made to do one job, and that was to clean up the messes of the homes in Japan. This one just has so many interesting options for something as old as it is. This has got to be one of the earliest ones that I have in my collection in terms of the Japanese machines. There may be others, but for now, I think this is the oldest. And like I said, I'm merely taking a guess as to this being from 1974, but as it lines up for what I've been able to dig up, I'd say I have a pretty good inclining of where it is from in terms of time frame. Now, like I said, kind of in the run demo, I am not 100% certain what this button does. After filming the run demo itself, I did kind of just take a look at it to double check, but there is another port on the other side right here, kind of under where the cord is up in here, that is for the blower. But in testing that out, which interestingly enough, the hose handle on-off switch does control the blower feature as well. But in taking a look at it, this button really does nothing in terms of for blowing or sucking. So unfortunately, we may never know what that does, but either way, still a really cool machine, still works really, really well. And if I had attachments, I'd love to see how it does on something like a hard floor or something like that. But it is definitely different. It's a little orange hamburger-shaped vacuum cleaner that really is no frills or thrills, but definitely is interesting enough that I thought it was worthy, especially when you compare it to something, maybe of around the same time with like the Rainbow D1 or 2, kind of similar in shape and everything. It doesn't use water per se, but it definitely does do quite a good job just the same. So, but I hope you guys all enjoyed our little video today. We have one more episode of the series for Japanese machines, but we will take a look at that next week. But you guys all have a great rest of your weekend, as well as a great rest of your Sunday. And we will catch you again in the next one. Have a great rest of your day, y'all.